Hello everybody and welcome back to the Every 5 Game series here at BSH. We're glad to have you back here on the BSH YouTube or in your pod feed, and again, we thank FanDuel for sponsoring this series. The Flyers are now 15 games into the season, and I'd say we're just about far enough into the season where we can stop saying it's early for every discussion we have, especially conversations about whether a player is off to a good start or not, or how the team looks overall in certain aspects of their game. So let's lead it off with the storylines of the last 5 games and do a little recap to kick things off. As of Wednesday the 12th, the Flyers have a record of 8-5-2 and sit at 4th in the Metro Division with 18 points. And they're currently in the second wildcard spot, which, that's fun. If you're feeling spicy after these last 5 games, FanDuel currently has their odds for the Flyers to make the playoffs at plus 220, or if you feel really confident that they'll make the playoffs but lose in the first round, they've got odds on that under stage of elimination set at plus 390. The last 5 games were a tale of 2 teams. There were times when they played a maddening brand of hockey where they generated very little offense and had periods and even an entire game where they looked lifeless. Then there were times where they showed the ability to completely control play and prevent their opponents from generating much of anything. Last Saturday, the team matched up against the Maple Leafs at home and dropped a 5-2 dud behind Dan Vladar's first bad game of the season. He gave up 4 goals on 19 shots and got pulled just 33 seconds into the third period, making way for Alexei Kolosov. It was a pretty lifeless effort from the team, only mustering 14 shots through 2 periods before tallying 19 shots alone in the third period, when it was already kind of a little too late. We also saw Tyson Forster block a shot with his foot in this one, and that's caused him to be out of the lineup since then, even though he did finish this game. The next day was probably their worst game of the season thus far. Actually, definitely their worst game of the season thus far, losing 2-1 to the Calgary Flames, who were the worst team in hockey going into that game, and still are at the time of this video. This game was an unacceptable effort across the board, with the team managing only 18 shots against a team that had been giving up about 30 per game. After the game, Rick Tocchet called out his team, saying repeatedly that the team had no will, and
I think we have a couple of guys the last 3 games are accepting it's just another hockey game. The fans pay a lot of money here to watch games, and I don't think we gave them a half-decent product the last 2 games.
The team did respond on Tuesday in Montreal against a red-hot Canadiens team, winning 5-4 in the shootout. The Flyers went up 3-0 in the first period before Montreal came back to score 4 unanswered in the second. It was another rough game by the stats for Vladar, but ultimately the Flyers came back and won it, registering a season-high 42 shots on goal in the game. 2 days later, they went into Nashville and got a 3-1 regulation win, though, again, it wasn't a perfect effort, as they came out kind of flat to start the game. The big note out of this one is that Michkov scored his second goal of the season, and this time it wasn't a garbage time goal, and it seems like that goal was a huge weight off of Mich's shoulders. Finally, the team came back home for a Saturday matinee against the Senators, where they earned a point but lost in overtime behind Sam Erson's first game back after a short trip on the IR. By the numbers, it definitely wasn't Erson's best game, but he had an extremely light workload as the Senators only managed 14 shots in the entire game and were held shotless for almost 20 minutes of game time. Matvei Michkov scored for a second straight game after some great effort against Jake Sanderson, but it was another inconsistent effort for the team overall and capped off a pretty inconsistent 5-game chunk for the team. And it's not just that Michkov's on-ice play was a storyline these past 5 games. His off-ice comments after the Senators game blew up across the various online Flyers communities, which takes us on to the next storyline. Through his interpreter, Slava Kuznetsov, Michkov opened up about his offseason, saying,
Truly, first time I was rested for the 4 months. No hockey. Training is not the same. But in the beginning of the season, lost concentration. With every game, feeling better and better.
Now, I'm going to gloss over the truly insane fan reactions that came out of these comments and focus on putting things into perspective. To put it plainly, Michkov is saying he changed up his summer training by not doing any on-ice work, which means he spent his summer in the gym and working on fitness. Now, you might say that that doesn't make any sense because he came into camp out of shape, but what it really was is that he spent 4 months doing almost nothing on the ice, which made him a little out of hockey shape. It's really as simple as that. And all things told, it wasn't an ideal summer for Michkov, but it's not the end of the world. We're 15 games into the season, and it looks like these past 2 games have been the turning point for Michkov getting back on his game. Obviously, that's a wait-and-see situation, but the positive signs are there. And there really shouldn't be any question that Michkov is an intense, driven athlete who spends as much time working on his game as possible. It's worth rehashing some of what we've already learned about Michkov after some fans went completely wacko on social media in the past few days. Probably the first thing that comes to mind about Michkov's drive are the comments we got from Danny Briere at the end of last season after his year-end meeting with Michkov.
He came in, he has a detailed plan of all the things he wants to do, and I was actually shocked by how prepared he was for his meeting, and he knew exactly what he needed to do and how he wants to conduct himself this summer. You know, I left the meeting like laughing to myself, like, wow, this if he accomplishes half of the thing he has on his list to do, we're in really good shape.
But you also might recall last July when Michkov first arrived in Philly to join the Flyers, he immediately wanted to get on the ice even after a 22-hour flight. And around that same time, Bill Meltzer wrote an article for the Flyers website and dove into some of the things to know about Michkov, pointing out that he has rarely taken time off during the off seasons, and previously he'd spent nearly all of his available time solely on the ice, and only just started hitting the gym over the last couple years. So as Michkov said himself, his training was just not the same this year as it had been in the past. But why did he approach the summer like this? Well, if you talk to any Flyers fan at the end of last season, they'd probably all agree that Michkov's on-ice play was already high level, but he needed to work on his skating and conditioning, particularly his speed burst. Looking at Michkov's NHL Edge data from last season, Michkov's top speed was below the 50th percentile for forwards, and he didn't register a single burst at 22 miles an hour or above, which again was below 50th percentile. So if his thought process was to dedicate his summer to getting stronger, it was undoubtedly the right idea. But focusing solely on the gym and physical fitness, yeah, maybe not the best idea. The last thing I'll say in this is that a lot of people should just cool down about this whole thing. Let's not forget that back in 2023, just 2 months before he was drafted, his father died unexpectedly in Sochi. The kid came up watching his dad play hockey when he was 2 years old, learned from his dad all the way, and by all accounts was very close to him. Then 3 months after he was drafted, he starts on SKA in the KHL and is scratched for 4 of their first 5 games before they loaned him to play in Sochi, the very place where his father died just 5 months prior. He ended up playing the entire season there in a place that held some pretty bad memories. Then he comes over to the United States to play for the Flyers in a completely different country at the age of 19 and 20. And for as happy as he might have been to be playing in the NHL and doing so well in his rookie season, he's still a 20-year-old kid who had been doing hockey non-stop since his dad passed away, pinballing all over the place for 2 years straight. The kid probably just needed some rest and wanted to go home. And at the end of last season, he said as much in his breakup day press conference, saying,
The first is take a good rest. It was truly hard season. We'll plan to go to Russia and rest there. Long time didn't see the relatives and want to spend some time with them. Missing the Russian language, Russian culture.
Ultimately, this boils down to a completely understandable and reasonable offseason when you take everything into account. His summer training wasn't ideal, but by no means does it mean a lack of effort or care by Michkov. If it happens again next summer, then we can start having that conversation. Moving on from the Michkov storyline, let's take a look at some stats, and I'm going to start off looking at shots and chances from these last 5 games. Travis Konechny led the team with 14 shots on goal, followed by Trevor Zegras, Noah Cates, and Bobby Brink, all with 13. The top 3 in scoring chances were Owen Tippett with 11, and Christian Dvorak and Matvei Michkov tied for second with 10 each. As for high danger scoring chances, Dvorak led the team over that span with 7, and then Zegras, Brink, and Cates were all tied with 4. Dvorak is kind of a surprise there, mostly because he doesn't feel like that dangerous of an offensive player, or like he generates that much. But here's Dvorak's shot map from Evolving Hockey for all situations, and man, you can see why Tocchet leans on this guy so much. For you podcast listener, it's such a tight concentration of shots directly in front of the goalie, which is exactly what Tocchet has been preaching going into the hard ice. And here's a heat map from HockeyViz showing the Flyers' 5-on-5 offense when Dvorak is on the ice. Yes, the slot is ice cold, but the area right in front of the goalie has a pretty hot spot. I don't expect Dvorak to pop off with crazy offensive numbers this year or anything, but he's clearly one of those guys doing exactly what Tocchet wants in the O-zone. Moving on to look at some expected goal for percentage. The top of the list at 5-on-5 is Matvei Michkov with a 60%, followed by Bobby Brink, just under 58%, and Zegras under that, again, just under 58%. Singling out Michkov there, for the month of October, he was at 50%. In October, he's up 10%, up to 60%. Yeah, his game's not fully back yet, but the underlying numbers are starting to match the eye test of him looking better lately. Finally, I'm going to look at high danger chances, specifically at 5-on-5, which I pulled from Natural Stat Trick. Looking first at how many high danger scoring chances the Flyers as a team are getting per game, they averaged 8 per game in October, and in the 5 games they played in November, they're averaging 1 more high danger chance per game. Looking at the flip side of that and how many high danger scoring chances that they're allowing, they've gave up just over 7 per game in October, but for the 5 games in November, they're averaging 8 per game. So yeah, the team is generating 1 more high danger chance per game, but they're also giving up 1 more per game as well. Looking at that in percentage, for October, their high danger chance percentage was 53%, and in November so far, that number is almost identical, just barely lower. On the season, their overall high danger scoring chance percentage is right at 53% and actually ranks 9th best in the league. It's definitely nice to see the team generating more offense, seeing as how low event they've been for the most part, but it's been evened out so far by giving up more chances per game as well. And thinking back to the last 5 games we played and those recaps, yeah, that makes sense. Moving on to special teams. Let's take a look at the power play first. On the season, it sits at a 19.6% efficiency, which ranks 14th best in the league. Over their last 5, it ran at 18.8%, so a little down from their average, and they scored 3 goals on 16 opportunities. Checking in again on their high danger chances on the power play, they have a total of 23 high danger chances all season, which is tied for 30th in the league. And they're averaging about half a high danger chance per opportunity, which is tied for 29th in the league. So they're definitely not getting that many high danger chances on the power play, but I'll settle for a good overall efficiency. It's really baby steps with our power play expectations after these past few years. On to the penalty kill, that's running at an 88% efficiency, which is 4th best in the league. Over the last 5 games, it was just a little bit lower at about 86% after they allowed 2 goals on 14 opportunities. Again, I'm going to look here at high danger chances. On the season, they've given up only 25 high danger chances on the PK, which is 6th best in the league. And looking at that as a per game stat, they're giving up just under a half of a high danger chance per PK situation, which is 4th best in the league. These special teams numbers were pretty similar to the previous 5 games, so nothing too drastic in terms of change. From there, let's take a look at the goalies. As mentioned during the recap, we finally saw Vladar fall back to earth a bit. On the season, he's played 9 games and has a .917 save percentage. His goals saved above average remain strong. He saved almost 5 goals more than the average goalie, which ranks 6th best in the league still. And for goals saved above expected, he's saved more than 7.5 goals above expected, which ranks 9th best in the league. Over the last 5 games, he played 3 of them for an .857 save percentage. Definitely don't want to see him repeating that save percentage going forward, but because of his hot start, his season numbers still look really, really good. Next, we get to talk about a goalie we haven't been able to talk about yet, Alexei Kolosov, who got into his first games of the season, 1 start and 1 relief appearance over these past 2 games. In those 2 games, he had a .929 save percentage. I'm not going to go through his advanced stats after playing only 4 periods, but it was encouraging to see him play well. It's just a bummer we wasted a good start from him on that god-awful game against the Flames. And finally, after a short stint on the IR, Sam Ersson got back into game action on Saturday against the Senators. So far this season, he's played 5 games for an .864 save percentage. Looking at his goals saved above average, he's let in almost 4 more goals than the average goalie, which ranks 40th out of 47 qualified goalies. And his goals saved above expected is just slightly in the negative and ranks 37th out of 47 goalies. Now, it's not great to be ranked that low compared to other goalies, but just looking at the numbers themselves, He's been pretty dead even in terms of expected goals, which is a huge improvement from last year's numbers. He got into one game in the last 5 with a .769 save percentage in that game against the Senators, but again, there was a period where they didn't register a single shot on goal for almost an entire period, so. I know for a lot of people they're getting tired of the whole, well, he performed better than his numbers look, but hopefully we'll see things that trend upward for Urson. Moving on to the 3 stars for the last 5 games. For third star, I'm going to give this to Christian Dvorak. He scored 1 goal and 3 assists in the last 5, and all 3 of those assists were primaries. Those are pretty decent numbers, and from earlier when we looked at his scoring chances and shot locations, yeah, I think he deserves third star here. Second star, it's his first time on here, but hopefully he's going to be on it a lot going forward. It's Matvei Michkov. He had 2 goals and 1 assist over the last 5, and he looks like he might be starting to turn the corner. And finally, first star is Travis Konechny. He had 7 points in the last 5, scoring 2 goals and 5 assists. I feel like Konechny has been a target for a lot of fans to start the season, and he has kind of looked off his game, but he's quietly started putting up points, and he's second on the team in scoring with 13 points. Ideally, I'd like to see him look like he's back on his game, but at the end of the day, a lot of people are going to judge his season based on his point totals after his big contract extension, so at the very least, he's starting to catch up in that regard. And finally, before we wrap everything up, let's look ahead at the Flyers' next 5. They face Edmonton tonight, who are off to another slow start, but last game, McDavid went off against Columbus. Let's just hope they're not fully woken up from that just yet. Then on the weekend, the Flyers hit the road to play St. Louis on Friday and Dallas on Saturday. St. Louis is off to a pretty rough start, and Dallas, of course, are a tough team. Then the Flyers have 4 days off before facing St. Louis at home again next Thursday and New Jersey next Saturday. The Devils are off to a hot start and have one of the best records in the league. So regardless of whether the Oilers have woken up or not, that's a great team, and it looks like 3 of the next 5 are going to be tough matchups against playoff teams. Hopefully they don't take the Blues lightly, because even though they're bad, they can't have a repeat of Calgary where they came out lifeless just because it was a bad team. This should be another good test for the team and give us a better idea of who this team is. Thanks again for watching on YouTube and listening on your podcast feeds. Thank you to FanDuel for sponsoring this video, and we will see you again soon.